0500 hours, Dnipro River Corridor Eastern Bank. A thick gray mist clings to the surface of the dark water, obscuring the far shore. The air is cold and damp, heavy with the smell of wet river mud and diesel exhaust. Inside the fortified German border checkpoint, the routine is slow and heavy. Guards in camouflage pace the perimeter fence, their boots crunching softly on the wet gravel. A coffee machine hisses inside the warm guard shack. The only light comes from the pale, distant glow of a nearby village, and the harsh yellow beams of the perimeter floodlights cutting through the fog. High above the cloud layer, a faint buzzing sound blends with the wind. It is not a bird. A small black drone hovers silently, its camera lens rotating mechanically. It locks onto the heat signatures of the sleeping barracks and the parked armored vehicles. On the ground, a German sentry pauses mid-stride. He tilts his head, listening to the sky. He hears nothing but the rhythmic lapping of the river against the pylons. The drone operator miles away presses a transmit button. Coordinates lock in. The silence holds for exactly 3 more seconds. The horizon 5 miles west suddenly flashes with a violent, rhythmic blooming of light. A low rumble rolls across the plains like approaching thunder. Then the sky splits open. The high-pitched shriek of incoming ordnance tears through the air. The sentry looks up. The first 155mm shell slams into the earth 10 meters from the main gate. The ground erupts. A massive geyser of black soil, concrete, and fire shoots 50 feet into the sky. The shockwave lifts the sentry off his feet and hurls him backward into the sandbag wall. He hits with a sickening thud, his helmet flying off. Another shell impacts the vehicle motor pool instantly. A heavy transport truck disintegrates. The explosion rips the chassis apart, sending a tire spinning through the air like a frisbee. Metal shrapnel sprays outward at supersonic speeds, slicing through the canvas tents nearby. Fuel tanks rupture. A fireball consumes the parking area, turning the gray morning into a blinding orange nightmare. The barrage intensifies. It is a steel rain. Rounds pound the earth every second, walking the fire line toward the center of the camp. The main guard tower takes a direct hit. The steel support legs buckle and snap under the sheer kinetic force. The structure collapses in a twisted heap of metal, crashing down onto the perimeter fence with a deafening screech of tearing steel. Dust chokes the air. Visibility drops to 0. Men scramble from their bunks, stumbling half-dressed into the chaos. The shockwaves knock them down like bowling pins. Debris rains down. Chunks of burning asphalt, shattered wood, and jagged steel. A soldier crawls through the mud, dragging a wounded comrade whose leg is pinned by a fallen beam. The roar of the explosions is relentless, drowning out the shouting. A German lieutenant kicks open the door of the command bunker. He is covered in dust. He grabs a confused private by the vest and drags him into the safety of a concrete trench. He screams into his handheld radio, demanding a situation report. The radio only spits static. He looks up and sees the communications antenna is gone, vaporized. He slams the radio against the trench wall. He points to the heavy machine gun nest on the north side. He roars orders to man the line. Defense protocols initiate. The initial volley begins to lift, shifting targets deeper into the rear. The smoke clears slightly, revealing the devastation. Craters pockmark the service road. The main gate is gone. Fires crackle and pop where the supply trucks used to be. The lieutenant racks the slide of his rifle. He looks toward the tree line across the field. The shelling was not the attack. It was the door knocker. 0530 hours, center of the German border post. Thick black smoke billows from the burning fuel depot, mixing with the morning mist to create a suffocating gray smog. Visibility is less than 20 meters. The ground vibrates continuously, a low-frequency tremor that rattles the teeth of every survivor. Inside the fractured defensive lines, squads of German soldiers sprint low across the open ground. They drag ammunition crates toward the secondary trench line. Their uniforms are torn and stained with soot. The air smells of sulfur and pulverized concrete. A high-pitched screech tears the sky apart again. It is louder this time, closer. A soldier looks up, his face smeared with dirt. He dives into a crater just as the air bursts. The artillery barrage shifts targets. The Ukrainian battery walks its fire directly onto the main barracks complex. 3 shells impact the roof of the enlisted dormitory simultaneously. The structure does not just collapse, it disintegrates. The concrete roof slabs pulverize into dust. The brick walls blow outward, spraying the courtyard with jagged masonry. Glass windows shatter into millions of lethal shards, shredding the sandbags piled nearby. Inside the ruins, a bunk bed flies through a gaping hole in the wall, landing in the mud. A fire erupts in the mess hall next door. The gas lines ignite. A massive blue and orange flame jets out of the windows like a blowtorch. The heat is instant and blistering. It blisters the paint on the nearby armored vehicles. A squad of border guards attempts to exit the burning building. The doorway collapses, trapping them. They smash their rifle butts against the debris, shouting for leverage. A sergeant outside runs toward them. He grabs a piece of rebar sticking out of a concrete slab and pulls. His muscles strain. The veins in his neck bulge. He heaves the slab aside just enough for a coughing private to squeeze through. The private tumbles out, gasping for air, his skin red from the heat. The bombardment intensifies. Rounds churn the earth, turning the orderly base into a lunar landscape. A communications tower takes a hit at its base. It groans, tilts, and crashes down across the access road, crushing a parked Jeep flat. The horn of the Jeep jams, blaring a continuous, mournful note that cuts through the explosions. The German lieutenant crouches behind the wheel of a destroyed truck. He waves his hand furiously, signaling his men to abandon the structures. He cups his hands over his mouth and bellows orders to move to the trench network. He grabs a bewildered medic by the shoulder and shoves him toward the earthworks. A shell lands in the ammunition storage locker. The explosion is blinding. A shockwave ripples out, visible in the damp air. It knocks the lieutenant flat against the mud. Debris rains down for 10 seconds straight, burning wood, twisted metal, and dirt. The lieutenant pushes himself up. He spits blood and grit onto the ground. He checks his rifle. The magazine is seated. He looks around. The barracks are gone. The motor pool is a graveyard of burning metal. The only thing left standing is the trench line. 0600 hours, eastern perimeter of the German outpost. The heavy artillery barrage cuts out abruptly. The sudden absence of explosions leaves a ringing silence that screams in the ears of the survivors. Thick, oily smoke drifts across the cratered field, mixing with the morning fog. In the forward trench, a German sergeant wipes soot from his eyes. He checks his magazine. He looks over the parapet. The ground trembles again. This time, it is not the sharp shock of impact. It is a deep, rhythmic, mechanical grinding. It comes from the tree line. The forest edge, 300 meters away, begins to shake. Small trees snap into fall. A massive, dark shape tears through the vegetation. A Ukrainian battle tank bursts from the cover. Its engine roars, a deep guttural growl that vibrates the chest. Mud sprays from its heavy tracks as they churn the wet earth. It is not alone. Two more tanks smash through the brush to its left and right, forming a wedge formation. The lead tank accelerates. It hits the outer perimeter wire. The steel mesh groans and snaps, wrapping around the treads before being crushed into the mud. The turret rotates smoothly, scanning for targets. The black barrel levels out. "Tank! Front!" the sergeant screams. He slams his shoulder against the dirt wall and grabs a disposable anti-tank launcher. The lead tank fires. The muzzle flash lights up the gray morning. The air compresses. The round slams into a concrete machine gun bunker on the German left flank. The bunker vanishes in a cloud of dust and flying concrete blocks. The sound of the impact arrives a split second later, a sharp cracking boom. Machine gun fire erupts from the tank's turret. The coaxial gun chatters violently. Red tracers stitch a line across the top of the German trench. Dirt kicks up in small geysers. A defender pops his head up to fire his rifle. The heavy caliber rounds catch him instantly. He spins around and drops back into the mud. The sergeant arms his launcher. He rests the tube on the lip of the trench. He aligns the sights on the lead tank's track. His hands shake from the adrenaline. He presses the trigger. The rocket hisses out of the tube, leaving a trail of gray smoke. It streaks across this open ground. The projectile strikes the front armor of the tank. A spark showers the hull. The explosion leaves a black scorch mark, but the tank does not stop. The reactive armor tiles detonate, absorbing the blow. The beast continues forward, relentless. Its engine revs higher as it climbs over the remains of a crushed sentry box. The tracks grind metal against stone, a screeching sound that pierces the rattle of gunfire. More infantry pour out of the forest behind the armor. They move in tight clusters, using the tanks as mobile shields. They fire assault rifles from the hip, suppressing the German heads. The assault is fully underway. 0630 hours, primary defensive line. The noise is deafening. It is a solid wall of sound. Engines roaring, heavy guns booming, and the snap of supersonic bullets. The lead Ukrainian battle tank climbs the outer berm of the main trench. Its engine screams as the tracks fight for grip on the loose, wet soil. The 60-ton steel beast crests the lip. It hangs there for a second, silhouetted against the firelight. Then it tips forward. The tank slams down onto the trench floor. It crushes the wooden duckboards and collapses the earth walls. A German defender, too slow to move, vanishes beneath the right track. The ground shakes violently. The tank pivots. its rear exhaust blowing thick black diesel smoke into the faces of the retreating soldiers. It does not stop. It drives straight through the defensive line, widening the gap. Behind the tank, an armored personnel carrier screeches to a halt. The rear ramp drops with a heavy clang. Ukrainian infantry flood out. They move fast, low to the ground. They fan out into the breach, weapons raised. A German machine gunner in a secondary bunker opens fire. The tracers hammer the side of the carrier, sparking harmlessly off the armor. The tank turret swings around. The main gun fires at point-blank range. The muzzle blast is a physical blow. It hits the bunker. The concrete roof lifts into the air and flips over. Dust and pulverized rock engulf the position. The machine gun stops instantly. "Grenade!" a Ukrainian squad leader screams. He pulls the pin and hurls the explosive over a sandbag wall. It lands in a mortar pit. 2 German soldiers dive for cover. The grenade detonates. Dirt, shrapnel, and helmets fly into the air. The breach is open. More Ukrainian troops pour through the gap in the wire. They move methodically, clearing the trenches one by one. A soldier kicks open a bunker door and sprays the interior with rifle fire. Another tosses a smoke canister. Thick white smoke hisses out, blinding the defenders further down the line. The German lieutenant rallies a small group near the command post. He fires his rifle over the top of a crate. He drops an empty magazine and slams a fresh one home. He sees the line crumbling. He grabs his radio. He screams for immediate reinforcements. The only reply is the crackle of jamming and the sound of gunfire getting closer. A stray bullet strikes the radio handset, shattering the plastic. He stares at the broken pieces in his hand. He looks up. The enemy is inside the wire. 0645 hours, administrative block, German forward operating base. The battle is no longer distant artillery, it is in the room. The air inside the complex is thick with concrete dust and the acrid smell of burning plastic. The emergency lights flicker, casting strobing shadows against the blood-smeared walls. The sound of gunfire is continuous, a deafening rapid-fire staccato that echoes off the concrete floors. Outside, a Ukrainian tank pivots its turret toward the fuel depot. The main gun fires. The shell punches through the double-walled steel tank. The explosion is catastrophic. A massive fireball rolls upward, consuming the oxygen in the courtyard. The shockwave shatters every remaining window in the admin building. Glass sprays inward like shrapnel. Inside the hallway, a German fire team holds a narrow choke point. They are pinned down. Bullets chip away the corner of the wall protecting them. Concrete fragments spray into their faces. A corporal leans out to fire a burst. A round strikes his rifle receiver. The weapon shatters in his hands. He recoils, staring at the twisted metal, his hands numb from the impact. "Flashbang!" a voice screams from the other side of the wall. A metal canister clatters across the tiled floor. It spins and stops at the corporal's feet. He kicks it, but too late. The grenade detonates. A blinding white flash fills the corridor. The bang overrides all other sound. The German soldiers stumble back, hands over their ears, disoriented. The Ukrainian assault team breaches. They flow through the smoke like shadows. The point man kicks the double doors open. He fires 2 rounds into the chest of the stunned corporal. The German soldier slams backward into a row of metal lockers. The lockers dent from the impact. The fight disintegrates into a brutal brawl. Distances are measured in inches. A German soldier charges a Ukrainian entrant, swinging his rifle like a club. The stock connects with a helmet. The Ukrainian stumbles but drives his shoulder into the German's midsection. They crash through a drywall partition, landing in a cloud of gypsum dust in the adjacent office. The Ukrainian soldier rolls on top. He draws a combat knife. He drives it down. The German grabs his wrist. They struggle, grunting, boots scrabbling for purchase on the slick floor. The Ukrainian jerks his hand free. He strikes. The struggle stops. In the main corridor, the Ukrainian squad leader signals forward. He steps over a body. He stacks up on the door to the communications room. He shoots the lock off. He kicks the door. It swings open. Inside, a German officer is destroying hard drives with a hammer. He pulls a pistol. The squad leader fires first. The officer falls across the desk, scattering the smashed electronics. The squad leader taps his headset. He reports the building secure. Outside, the roar of the fire at the fuel depot grows louder, casting a dancing orange light through the broken door frame. 700 hours. Entrance to the subterranean command complex. The trench leading to the heavy steel blast doors is a choke point. The air is gray with concrete dust and cordite. A single floodlight dangles by a wire from the ceiling, swinging wildly, casting nauseating, shifting shadows. At the end of the tunnel, a German heavy machine gun nest blocks the path. The gunner holds the trigger down. The weapon roars, spitting a continuous stream of brass casings onto the floor. The bullets chew up the sandbags at the corner where the Ukrainian assault team takes cover. "Rocket!" a Ukrainian sergeant yells over the din. A soldier slides forward on his stomach. He drags a disposable bunker-buster launcher through the mud. The machine gun rounds hammer the wall above him, showering his neck with sparks and rock chips. He ignores it. He rolls onto his back, swings the tube around the corner, and fires blindly. The rocket streak is short. It covers the 20 meters in a blink. It impacts the sandbag wall directly in front of the German gun. The explosion is contained by the narrow tunnel walls. The pressure wave is massive. It liquefies the sandbags. The German gunner is thrown backward against the steel blast door with bone-crushing force. The heavy machine gun is ripped from its mount and bent into useless scrap metal. The firing stops. The silence is sudden and ringing. "Move! Move!" The Ukrainian squad surges around the corner. They sprint over the smoking debris. They reach the massive steel blast doors. The locking wheel on the center of the door begins to spin. The survivors inside are trying to seal it. A combat engineer pushes through the squad. He slams a rectangular block of plastic explosives onto the upper and lower hinges. He jams a detonator into the clay. He grabs the collar of the soldier next to him and yanks him back. They dive into a side alcove. The detonation is sharp and brutal. It punches the air from their lungs. The heavy steel door does not open, it falls. It crashes inward onto the concrete floor of the command center with a thunderous clang. Dust billows out. The Ukrainian point man steps into the doorway. He raises his rifle. Inside, the emergency red lights bathe the room in blood-colored gloom. A German officer, dazed and bleeding from the ears, stumbles toward a wall locker. He reaches for a weapon. The point man fires 2 shots. The officer collapses against the metal locker, sliding down to the floor. The rest of the squad floods the room. They sweep their flashlights across the banks of monitors and radio equipment. They kick weapons away from the hands of the stunned staff on the floor. The sergeant keys his radio. "Bunker secure. 0730 hours. The northern ravine, flanking the captured outpost." The wind shifts, pushing the heavy curtain of black smoke to the south. The air clears, revealing the shallow valley that runs behind the German defensive line. In the mud at the bottom of the draw, the German reserve platoon makes its move. 3 infantry fighting vehicles surge forward, their engines screaming as they push up the slick slope. Infantry run alongside them, using the armor for cover. They are the last hope for retaking the breach. High overhead, the black drone circles. It locks onto the hot exhaust plumes of the vehicles. The operator marks the grid square. "Fire mission, airburst, danger close." The Ukrainian battery miles away answers. The guns thunder. The shells arc over the battlefield. They do not hit the ground. They detonate 20 meters above the heads of the German counterattack force. The first explosion is a thunderclap that snaps trees in half. A cone of preformed tungsten fragments sprays downward at 3,000 feet per second. The result is a meat grinder. The shrapnel punches through the thin top armor of the lead fighting vehicle. It shreds the commander's hatch. The vehicle slews violently to the right, tracks locking up. It smashes into a boulder, the momentum lifting the rear end into the air before crashing back down. Smoke pours from the viewports. The infantry in the open have nowhere to hide. The ravine walls trap the shockwaves, amplifying the force. Men are thrown like ragdolls against the rocks. Helmets shatter. Kevlar vests rip apart under the barrage. The second vehicle attempts to reverse. It backs over a fallen tree. A heavy shell lands directly on the engine deck. The explosion cracks the chassis in 2. The fuel cells rupture. A massive fireball engulfs the hull. The ammunition inside begins to cook off. Pop, pop, boom. The turret blows off, spinning through the air like a toy, landing upside down in the mud. A German squad leader tries to stand, screaming for his men to disperse. A shockwave knocks him flat. He crawls through the wet grass, dragging his rifle. He looks back. The ravine is a smoking graveyard. The third vehicle is burning. There is no counterattack. There is only fire and the groans of the dying. 800 hours. Secondary Tactical Operations Center, German rear area. The dugout is cramped and smells of sweat and ozone. A diesel generator hammers away outside, vibrating the timber roof beams. Inside, the air is hazy with cigarette smoke and dust shaken loose by distant impacts. Maps cover a plywood table, marked with frantic red grease pencil lines that show the collapse of the front. A bank of radios sits against the dirt wall, their lights flickering in the gloom. A German major slams his fist onto the table. The maps jump. He grabs the heavy handset of the long-range radio. He keys the mic. He screams for air support. He demands immediate strikes on the breach coordinates. The speaker replies with a high-pitched electronic shriek. It is not a voice. It is jamming, broad-spectrum white noise interference. The sound pierces the ears of everyone in the bunker. "Switch frequencies!" the major roars. A communications specialist spins the dials frantically. His hands tremble. He tries the backup channel. He tries the satellite link. "Nothing, sir. It's all static," the specialist yells. Outside, a Ukrainian electronic warfare vehicle, parked on a ridge 3 miles away, triangulates the signal spike. The operator presses a key. Data flows to a rocket artillery battery. A generic whoosh sound cuts through the noise of the generator outside. It is the sound of incoming precision rockets. The major looks up at the timber ceiling. He hears it. The first rocket strikes the communications antenna array directly above the dugout. The explosion is precise and devastating. The antenna mast shears off at the base. It topples, crashing onto the generator. The lights inside the bunker die instantly. Pitch blackness swallows the room. A split second later, the second rocket impacts the earth roof. The timber beams snap like matchsticks. The ceiling collapses. Tons of wet earth and heavy logs crash down onto the map table. The major is thrown against the dirt wall. The air is sucked out of the room, replaced by choking dust and the smell of high explosives. A red emergency light flickers on, hanging by a wire. The room is a ruin. The communications specialist is buried to his waist in soil, coughing violently. The radio bank is crushed, a mess of sparked wires and smashed metal casing. The major claws his way out of the debris. He wipes mud from his eyes. He finds the handset. The cord is severed. He throws it against the wall. He climbs up the collapsed slope of the dugout, emerging into the daylight. He looks at the antenna. It is a twisted, smoking stump of metal. He looks west. There are no jets in the sky. There is no help coming. The chain of command is broken. 0830 hours, the river marshes, west of the destroyed outpost. The organized defense has collapsed completely. The surviving German border guards are no longer a fighting force. They are a fleeing mob. They stumble through the knee-deep water and tall reeds of the riverbank. Boots suck into the heavy black mud, slowing their pace to a tortured crawl. Panic is visible in every movement. Soldiers drop heavy rucksacks into the slime. Helmets are discarded to reduce weight. Rifles are used as walking sticks or thrown into the bushes. A heavy supply truck, attempting to escape, roars down the muddy track toward the water. The wheels spin uselessly in the muck. The engine whines at the red line. The vehicle slides sideways, burying its axles in the soft earth. The driver kicks the door open and leaps out. He does not look back at the vehicle. He sprints toward the reeds, splashing through the shallows. On the high ridge overlooking the marshes, the Ukrainian heavy weapons team set up. They mount belt-fed machine guns on bipods. They have the high ground, they have the kill zone. "Suppressing fire," a lieutenant shouts. The ridge erupts. 3 heavy machine guns open up simultaneously. The bullets tear into the marshland. The water surface boils. Hundreds of small geysers erupt around the fleeing soldiers. The sound is terrifying, a mixture of the distant thump-thump-thump of the guns and the sharp crack hiss of rounds breaking the sound barrier inches from their heads. A running soldier is struck in the leg. The impact spins him around. He falls face first into the water. He thrashes, trying to keep his head above the surface, the water around him turning pink. 2 comrades grab his vest and drag him behind a fallen log. Bullets chew up the rotting wood, sending splinters flying. "Down! Get down!" a sergeant screams, waving his arms. The survivors dive into the mud. They press their bodies flat against the reeking earth. The tracers fly overhead, cutting down the tall reeds like a scythe. A group of 4 soldiers near the water's edge stops. They realize there is nowhere to go. The river is too wide. The enemy is behind them. The lead soldier throws his rifle into the water. He slowly raises his hands above his head. He stands up, trembling. A warning shot hits the water 2 feet in front of him. He freezes. He keeps his hands up. The Ukrainian infantry begin to descend the ridge, moving methodically, weapons trained on the trapped men below. The pocket is sealed. 900 hours. Ruins of the German border post. The heavy artillery battery finally ceases fire. The sudden absence of the booming guns leaves a heavy, ringing silence over the valley. The air is still, thick with the smell of burnt diesel, cordite, and wet ash. Gray smoke drifts lazily over the cratered asphalt, obscuring the sun. Ukrainian infantry squads move through the wreckage. They walk slowly, weapons held at the low ready. Their boots crunch on the carpet of shattered glass and spent brass casings. They step over the twisted steel beams of the collapsed watchtower, which lies across the road like the ribcage of a dead beast. Near the remains of the admin building, the survivors are processed. A line of German soldiers stands against a surviving brick wall. Their uniforms are torn and black with soot. Their hands are interlocked behind their heads. A Ukrainian soldier moves down the line. He frisks them efficiently. He pulls a combat knife from a belt and tosses it onto a pile of confiscated gear. He grabs a radio, checks it, and throws it onto the heap. In the center of the courtyard, a medic kneels in the mud. He works on a wounded German guard. He wraps a tourniquet around a shattered leg. He twists the windlass tight. The wounded man cries out in pain, his back arching. The medic ignores the sound. He marks the time on the man's forehead with a marker and moves to the next casualty. The lead Ukrainian battle tank parks in the center of the main highway. Its engine idles, a deep rhythmic rumble that vibrates the ground. The commander climbs out of the hatch. He sits on the turret roof, his legs dangling over the reactive armor tiles. He removes his helmet. He wipes a layer of grime from his forehead. He lights a cigarette. The smoke mixes with the fumes from the barrel. A soldier climbs the bent flagpole near the gate. He takes a knife and slashes the halyard. The scorched German flag flutters down, landing in a puddle of oily water. The soldier does not raise a new flag. He slides down, leaving the bare metal pole pointing at the gray sky. The tank commander looks west. The road ahead is empty. The asphalt stretches out toward the horizon, unbroken and unguarded. The corridor is secure.